So, studying university in Korea might sound very difficult, and for us, especially as international students, you might find a lot of things unfamiliar. As a Year 1 Yonsei student, you might have heard the terms RA and RC a lot. But what is an RA? What does an RA do? And how do you get RC hours? In this video, we will cover everything you need to know about RA and RC, so continue watching!
So first, let's start with RA. RA stands for Residential Assistant, which is a role to help with RC life and students who is living in the dorm. In simple terms, you can understand RAs are people who can help you to have better residential experience while living in Songdo dorms. In Songdo International Campus, there are two types of RA, administrative RAs and house RAs. House RAs focus on student life inside the house. They mentor students, support residential masters, organize house programs, and help manage daily interactions. On the other hand, administrative RAs support RC-wide programs. They work on program operations, manage registration on Korea Yonsei, and help create promotional materials like posters and videos. Being an RA is not just a title. It involves a lot of behind-the-scenes work. Therefore, to better understand the role of RA, we invited Francesca to have a quick interview with us.
My name is Francesca. I am a 23.5 CTM student, double majoring in CDM as well. And since I came to Yonsei and UIC and I found out about the existence of RAs, I always thought I wanted to try and be one, because when I was a freshman, I thought that RAs were very helpful and it seemed like a very nice job in a way. So I tried to apply, and after some time I finally got in and I got accepted as being an RA, and now I've been an RA for 3 semesters. This is my 3rd semester as an RA, and hopefully I will continue in the future as well. So RA, well, the definition, official definition of RA is residential assistant, because Yonsei has RC education. RC means residential college. So all freshmen are kind of asked to stay in the UIC dorms for their freshman year. And being an RA is basically being help to the students while living in the dorms, because, well, it can be hard. It can be hard. People are just adjusting to coming to universities, like switching from high school to university can be a big change. And especially if you think about UIC, where there's a lot of international students coming from abroad, it's also a completely different culture, completely different language, reality. So RAs are basically there as emotional support also, I would say. We're there to help students with whatever they need in their freshman year. Whenever we're kind of like the middle point of contact. We're not as official leadership figure as professors, but we're also a little not like normal students. So I think it's that makes us more approachable in a way, and it makes it also easier for students to ask for help and with whatever they need. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm a normal student in a way. I just wake up, I go to class, and on top of that, I always try to be available for the students. We get lots of messages, especially Appenzeller is one of the biggest houses. I think this semester we had almost 500 students. And we had 13 arrays this semester, so that means that on average we each take care of 40 students. We can get lots of messages. Students can ask us for anything. So on top of just like normal student duties, always being available if students need anything. And then I would say once a week we have meetings with all the RAs in Appenzeller, so that we can discuss what happened in the previous week, what programs we had, were they good, feedback, and also discuss what's going to happen in the next week, what needs to be done, or other RC common programs, if RC Olympics is going on, what's happening, are we winning, are we losing? So it's like a weekly meeting where we just like have a brief discussion of all the important matters that need to be taken care of. And that's mostly it, I would say. Just the biggest part is probably just being available to the students. Yeah. I think definitely empathy is one of them. need to understand that I think it's easy to forget what being a freshman was like, but we all were freshmen at one point in our life, and we all felt kind of lost, maybe some of us more than others, but I think being empathetic is a really huge skill that you need to have in order to be an RA, because you have to deal with lots of people and lots of different people coming from different backgrounds, and you might not relate to what they're going through, but still you need to be there for them and try to understand what's going on. And also probably another skill I would say is time management, or just like being able to plan your things, because as I said, you need to be a normal student first, and then on top of that, you need to juggle all the deadlines that come with being an RA. So if you have a program that's going to happen soon, there is some documentation that needs to be taken care of. Do you need to buy, maybe you might need to buy some things for your program, and then after that, you need to do some other documentation to like document what happened during the program. And we do have some deadlines when we have to submit all these documents to the RC office, and forgetting it is just putting a lot of extra work on your back on top of everything else that you need to do. So definitely planning skills also. Yeah, definitely. There's a few, but I remember this one time, without going into much detail, because I don't want to share too much about the students' situation. I want to respect their privacy. There was one of these students that was going through something really hard. She was going through a hard time, and then I tried my best to help with what I could do in my position, and then after some time passed, and then it was towards the end of the semester, I had the opportunity to meet their parents, because they came here, and her mom really thanked me very warmly for helping her daughter, because I think that stayed with me, because I can understand how parents might feel having their kids just thrown into this environment, and there's so many difficult things that they need to go through. It's like adapting to university life, but also you have to live with new people that you don't know, and you might not get along with these people. There might be roommate conflicts, and maybe there's stress, exams. So there's a lot going on, and especially for international students having their children so far away, I think some parents might be kind of worried, but at the same time, it made me feel so good to be able to make her mom feel better about her kid being here and not being alone, or completely alone. So that is definitely one memory that stayed with me. Yeah.
If you want to apply for RA, there are several key requirements. You must be a Yonsei student of sophomore standing or above, with a GPA of at least 3.0 out of 4.3. You also need to have passed required RC courses such as RC Self-Directed Activities and Yonsei RC 101. In addition, applicants must be able to stay in the dormitory, participate in the RA workshop, and meet all eligibility conditions listed in the official notice. In terms of benefits, RA positions offer scholarships. Shift RAs receive 3.5 million won, and regular RAs receive 3.0 million won. RAs also have some other benefits such as booking shuttle buses prior to the regular shuttle opening, since they are required to visit the offices as and when required. For registration process, students must first submit an online application through the Yonsei portal service by following the path: academic administration, other academic affairs, student, RA selection application. During the application process, applicants may select their preferred house, although the final house assignment may differ from their original choice. Please note that simultaneous applications for dormitory life assistant, house, and special assignment RA are not permitted. Applications may be completed in either Korean or English, and mixed languages are also allowed. However, students applying for international houses, such as Alien or Appenzeller, must complete their application entirely in English. Please notice that all of the above information can be changed, so it's better to keep updated with the recruitment procedures and other essential information in the website. RA plays a very important role behind the scenes. However, to better understand RC, we also need to look at the RC program itself.
RC self-directed activities is a mandatory course to be taken by first-year RC students. In order to help with your own personal development, you're supposed to do activities that are organized by RC houses and the RC Education Center. You ideally are supposed to participate in as many activities as possible, but you have to do at least 12 RC hours in order to fulfill the requirement. Once you do so, you're awarded 0.5 credits per semester, that is 1 credit for an entire.
All RC programs are managed through Career Yonsei. Click to Pigogwa program and set the mode to Chinhengjung to see the programs that are currently open for registering. There are many types of RC activities, including academic programs, cultural events, workshops, house activities, and RC common programs. And check whether the information is matched with your interest and schedule.
To apply for the activities you want to take part in, click in the activity itself and then scroll down to click in Sinjong button at the end of the page and fill in any forms if needed. Additionally, you can find some RC activities to gain your RC hours in group chat within your house. That's where RA usually upload events held by them, and you can totally get some hours by joining in these events. Don't forget that part of RA's role is to help you with this, so don't hesitate to ask them for help.
One of the important tips that you can follow is that do not wait until the last minute to complete your RC hours. Plan your RC hours in advance. What you can do is you can look into the schedules and try to match whichever RC activities matches to your schedule. In addition, you should always make sure that you're checking your activity report.
Since RC self-directed activities is mandatory, your completion depends on your activity records on Career Yonsei, so make sure to check your records regularly and avoid missing any required steps. You can first click on 비교과 프로그램 나의 신청 내역 to check all of your registered, finished, and cancelled activities. To check your records, click on RC 자기주도 활동, RC 학생. Other information is also included, such as what house you belong to and who is your RA. Please also bear in mind that you need to complete a final activity report and submit it to your RA before the definite period. You can check this in the same page also. Some examples for RC programs can be this very nice classical music listening program, this art workshop about typography, or this very interesting RC museum class, which includes 2 classes, Yonsei History Tour and Special Exhibition Tour, Korean Language, Hangul, and the Yonsei Spirit. The class 2 of this event is still open for applications, which enlarge your knowledge on the rich heritage of Hangul with an insightful guided tour. The slot is limited, so you better be fast to get your chance.
RAs operate and support the running of house and RC-wide programs, which RC students can freely participate in, building a more vibrant RC community. In this video, we have covered RA and RC programs here in the Yonsei International Campus. Whether you're looking to apply for an RA position or just trying to complete your RC hours, we hope this video has been informative for you. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.